They thought it was just another weekend, old friends, a lake, memories of college days. But everything changed overnight. It started with awkward glances, a touch of jealousy, and fleeting touches. Then came confessions, ones no one had dared voice before. Relationships once thought unshakable began to crack. New faces turned out to be more than just guests. They were catalysts for everything that had long been simmering beneath the surface. Some found themselves, others lost their way, some stayed loyal, others crossed lines. Then came the silence. The radio went dead. The signal disappeared. An eerie glow crept across the horizon, and right in the heart of personal drama came the alert. Missiles incoming. Suddenly, it didn't matter who had slept with whom, who had lied, who had longed for someone else. Only one question remained. Would they get the chance to say what needed to be said before the world vanished? Hi there, friend. Before we dive in, I have a quick request. Please subscribe to my friend's channel via the link in the description. It really means a lot to him. Now, on with the video. This is a story woven with love, deception, and the desire for retribution. Once more, Marcella and I were lagging behind schedule. Timeliness was never our forte. I made an effort, sure, but Marcella simply didn't believe in hurrying. Even on our wedding day, I half expected to be left waiting at the altar, until she showed up at the last possible moment, wearing that smug grin that screamed, "Told you I'd be there." But today wasn't a wedding. It was a holiday retreat. Labor Day weekend, to be exact, and we were heading to a friend's lake house, though technically, it belonged to his parents. The trip was casual, and everyone knew what to expect from Marcella's notoriously lax sense of urgency, so she strolled through the morning, far more relaxed than she had been on our big day 5 years ago. By the time we arrived, our old friends had already gathered on the dock. Keaton and Hollis were there, still inseparable after all this time, chuckling over something on a tablet. Tobias, forever the athlete, was chatting animatedly with his newest girlfriend, though I couldn't hear the words from where I stood. Leela, the brains of our college crew and now a bona fide nuclear scientist, tapped away at her phone, visibly annoyed. And then there were two more. One familiar, one new. Bastian stood next to a woman none of us recognized. They looked cozy, laughing quietly together. As Marcella and I approached, Bastian greeted us with a wave. "Dorian! Marcella! Glad you could make it." He hugged Marcella warmly and motioned to the woman at his side. "Meet Giselle, my fiancée. We're going public on Instagram next week." Giselle smiled shyly and offered a gentle hello. "Fiancée?" Marcella's face lit up. She wrapped Giselle in a delighted hug. "That's incredible. Congrats." Her energy matched mine, though deep down, I was reeling. The last time we'd all gathered here, 3 years earlier, Bastian had been heartbroken after a messy split. It was surreal. Back in school, Bastian and Joelle had been electric, chaotic and passionate, the kind of couple everyone assumed would end up married. Bastian had it all: wealth, charisma, looks, and wit. Still, Joelle walked out on him, and he hadn't been the same since. We skipped the lake trip for 2 years straight. First, Keaton and Hollis caught COVID. Then the war in Ukraine erupted, and Leela couldn't make it. Her wife, Ophelia, had just accepted a major role at the Pentagon. Ophelia wasn't part of our core group, but Leela was, and she decided to stay with her in DC. It was a letdown, but none of us wanted to go without Leela. So we all agreed to set aside the following year for a reunion. Honestly, I wasn't sure we'd ever manage it. Life had spread us in every direction. Bastian secured a plush position at his father's firm out in LA, with Tobias inevitably tagging along. The two had been joined at the hip since grade school. Leela finished her master's degree, moved to DC, and eventually married Ophelia. Marcella and I ended up in Dallas, she pursued nursing, and I landed a telecom job. Keaton returned to the Midwest with Hollis after law school. He began practicing while she kept things running at home. Between promotions, relocations, and starting families, it was harder and harder to sync our schedules. Keaton and Hollis now had two little ones, making spontaneity impossible. By our last lake visit, it was obvious our bond was fraying. Leela and I had long, late-night chats about it over Discord. Marcella thought we were being dramatic, but deep down, I suspected this might be our last real gathering. That made me determined to soak up every moment. I shook Bastian's hand with a firm grip, gave him a friendly slap on the back, and offered heartfelt congratulations. Giselle was striking, tall, slim, and stunning in that effortless, magazine cover kind of way. Marcella had always been beautiful, with her fiery red hair, athletic build, and those piercing blue eyes that caught attention everywhere we went. She still turned heads. But Giselle? Giselle had an edge, something elevated. "I'm the lucky one," she said, beaming. "I've heard so many stories about you all. Bastian never stops gushing about his college gang. This weekend's going to be such a blast." She glanced my way for a split second, just a faint tug at the corner of her mouth, almost like a smirk. Then she turned back to Bastian, and I figured I'd imagined it. While Marcella and Giselle quickly clicked, I slipped away and wandered over to Keaton and Hollis. We did the usual reunion routine, big smiles, semi-awkward hugs, the typical surface-level chatter. They hadn't changed much, still that textbook, Midwestern wholesomeness, with their golden hair and clear eyes. Hollis wasted no time pulling up pictures of their kids on the tablet. I nodded in all the right spots, smiled on cue, but after a while, I found a polite excuse to drift away. I liked them, genuinely, but the conversation had limits, and we were about to hit them. They eventually made their way over to chat with Marcella, Giselle, and Bastian, saying we'd catch up more back at the house. That left me with Tobias and his newest companion, whose name completely escaped me. Let's just say it was Cassidy. Could have been Cassidy, maybe Cassidy, possibly Cassidy. Tobias's preferences never leaned toward subtlety. He went for loud and flashy. Whatever playful banter they'd started with had clearly soured, and I had zero interest in being pulled into their tension. Tobias hadn't changed a bit over the years, and that wasn't exactly a compliment. Back in middle school, when Bastian's money made him a target, Tobias had unofficially taken up the role of protector. Their loyalty had formed back then, and Bastian never questioned it, even if Tobias hadn't always earned it. He'd coasted on that friendship for years. As their spat continued, I slipped past them, unnoticed, heading toward the one person, besides Marcella, who had convinced me to come at all. "Hey, nerd." My tiniest friend looked up with a scowl that melted into a smile. "Hey, dork," she grinned, wrapping me in a tight hug. "I'd have murdered you if you bailed." That hug said everything. When we finally pulled apart, I looked her in the eye. "You holding up okay, Leela?" "Where's Ophelia?" She tried to muster a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "She's working, again. I got in late last night." "She said she'd be here this morning," I responded. "But considering how chaotic everything's been lately..." Leela just lifted her phone with a small shrug. She always had this calmness about her, no matter how turbulent things were. It felt like every global crisis had decided to erupt this week. With the election on the horizon, even North Korea had resumed its usual saber rattling. New missile launches meant to stir up international nerves. "She told me to come without her," Leela added, her voice carrying the rhythmic softness of her heritage. "She won't make it." She let out a quiet exhale, half amusement, half resignation. Pure Leela. She probably made peace with that hours ago. "It's all good. I'm here. You're here. Let's make the most of it," she said. "Sorry, love. Let's get this started. Dorian, my guy." But whatever he was going to say got lost. Something had already locked onto me. "I want you to meet..." "Wait, how come she gets to have a phone?" Cassidy's voice sliced through the moment. "You said I couldn't bring mine. Why does she get an exception?" One of the core rules at the lake house was going tech-free. No screens in the bedrooms, no phones, no laptops. Even Keaton and Hollis had to stash their iPad in the glove box before entering. The cabin had a radio for emergencies, a dusty TV hooked to an old DVD player in the living room, and a stereo packed with retro vinyls. The idea was to disconnect and focus on each other, like we always did in college. But times had changed. Now that Keaton and Hollis had kids, they insisted on at least some way to stay connected. Still, we tried to honor the spirit of the tradition. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "Leela's on call for government work. She needs to be reachable in case something major happens." Cassidy shot me a dark look and stalked away. "Sorry, dude," I said under my breath. "She does that sometimes." "Don't sweat it. I'm just glad you're here," Tobias beamed, pulling me into a massive hug. The guy was built like a freight train. I'm not exactly small, tall and over 200 pounds, but he lifted me like I weighed nothing. I've told him to knock it off countless times. Never makes a difference. Only Bastian could actually rein him in. "Ty, put him down," Bastian said in a low voice. His tone had shifted over the years. It used to carry that jokey locker room bravado. Now it sounded tired, like someone who's seen too much. Tobias eased me back to the ground. "My bad," he mumbled, a heaviness in his voice that hadn't been there before. The old Tobias would have laughed it off like a kid caught stealing cookies. This one looked worn. Bastian patted him on the shoulder, then turned to me with an easy smile. "We good?" I gave a small nod. That was all he needed. He moved on, smooth as ever. "Let's go," he called, and the group started hauling our bags toward the docked boat. Bastian's grandparents had built the lake house back in the 70s. Originally, they had plans to turn the area into a string of vacation homes. The family fortune came from logging, and they'd intended to develop the land into a luxury retreat. Then came the conservation laws. Environmental surveys discovered 3 endangered bird species on the property. That shut the whole project down. Now, decades later, one species had bounced back enough to lose its protected status. Another had vanished entirely. The last one barely hung on. Our town, having existed before the legal protections were enacted, had a bit more freedom. Residents could still fish, own lakeside property, and use boats, but only by water. The old timber roads had long since been overtaken by forest. Bastian's family paid a local guy to handle transportation and upkeep during the off-season. Once we'd loaded our gear, the boat guy launched us off. It was about a 20-minute ride. Most of us used the time to catch up, share stories we hadn't posted online. Only 2 people stayed silent. Leela remained glued to her phone, fingers flying across the screen, eyebrows knitted in concentration. Cassidy stood rigid, arms crossed, throwing daggers at Leela, then Tobias. I got it. Being left out sucks. I tried to draw her into the conversation, but her answers were cold and clipped. Eventually, I gave up. It only seemed to make her more irritated, especially because Tobias wasn't making any effort at all. He was totally caught up in the reunion and couldn't stop sneaking peeks at Bastian's fiancée like it was a reflex. To be fair, he wasn't the only one. I glanced. So did Keaton, even Leela, and, unexpectedly, Hollis. Cassidy looked like she was ready to explode. Being ignored wasn't something she handled well. By the time we pulled up to the dock, her temper was at a boiling point. As we disembarked with our luggage, Hollis glanced at her phone. "Mom says Desmond and Thalia are great," she said. "They miss us, but everything's fine." That was the final spark. Cassidy erupted. "She has her phone too?" she shouted, face flushing with fury. "You've got to be kidding. This is such a double standard." "Babe," Tobias started. "No, don't babe me. I didn't even want to come to this dumb cabin with your dumb friends. You've been staring at her the whole time, and I'm just supposed to suck it up without TikTok like that's no big deal." "Yeah, no, not happening." She turned to the boat guy. "Can you take me back?" "Cassidy, come on." The boatman glanced at Bastian, waiting for a cue since he was the one footing the bill. Bastian answered with nothing more than a shrug. Ty's girlfriends storming off wasn't new. but this was the first time one had made her exit by boat. Taking the shrug as the go-ahead, the operator began helping Cassidy load her things, while Tobias stood at the edge of the dock, silently seething. Everyone, except Giselle, cast quick, uncertain glances at one another. We'd been to this lake house plenty of times, but only once when Ty was unattached, and that trip had gone south fast. He'd spent the whole weekend brooding until we'd finally packed up and left early. None of us were eager for a sequel. Bastian attempted to cheer Ty up as Cassidy's boat faded into the distance, but his effort was clearly half-hearted. Bastian looked about as drained as I'd felt the last time Ty stirred up this kind of drama. Glancing around, it was clear we were all on the same wavelength. No one said a word. We just grabbed our stuff and went inside to unpack. Marcella and I took our room, tidied up a bit, and by the time the sky turned golden, my stomach started to complain. We headed to the kitchen, planning to help prep dinner, only to find Hollis already manning the stove. Hollis had always played the caregiver in our group, even back when we were just messing around. It was oddly reassuring to see that hadn't changed. With her managing dinner, we took to setting the table. Predictably, the food was excellent. Hollis and Keaton had always been a reliable duo. She'd chosen home EC as her major. It had always been part of their shared vision. Back then, Bastian, Ty, and Marcella used to poke fun at them for it, but underneath the jokes, we all admired how committed they were to their future. Then, during a lull in the conversation, Giselle scanned the group and said, "Bastian told me the story of how you all met, but I want to hear your version." Bastian arched an eyebrow. "Fact-checking me?" "No," she replied, pausing. "It's just, different people remember things differently. I already heard Tobias's version. Now I want to hear yours." She turned to Keaton with a curious smile. "I heard you were part of the original crew. How'd that happen?" Keaton laughed. "It started with me and Bastian butting heads in a philosophy class." Bastian chuckled. "We didn't exactly hit it off right away, but eventually we got past that. Me, him, and Ty ended up becoming close. Hollis wanted in, and just like that there were 4 of us." He squeezed Hollis's hand, and they shared a quick look. Giselle turned to Hollis. "Was it weird being the only girl among 3 guys?" Hollis considered it for a second. "Sometimes, yeah. I sort of defaulted to being the group mom, which, honestly, Bastian and Ty kind of needed." She smiled gently. "Keaton and I were a bit older, so it made sense. Everyone kind of knew who the real adult was." Later that evening, Leela and Marcella joined us. Bastian's girlfriend glanced over at Leela, who was still glued to her phone. "You're the one who helped Bastian study, right?" She waited. "Leela?" Leela blinked, coming back to the moment. Oh, sorry, what was that?" "You tutored Bastian, didn't you?" "Oh, yeah. Him, and Tobias too," she replied with a light laugh. Bastian piped up. "She says I only kept her around because we needed a brain on the team." Marcella cut in. "Might not be wrong. Honestly, without her, half of us probably would have flunked out. We spent way too much time partying." She turned toward Giselle. "That's actually how I met Bastian, through Ty at a party. Like Keaton said, we just kind of hit it off. I think it was second year." Giselle raised a brow and smirked at Marcella. "You're stunning, and Tobias mentioned Bastian used to be a bit of a flirt. Did anything ever happen?" Marcella's eyes widened. "What? No way." She laughed. "No offense or anything, but seriously?" Giselle winked. "Come on, if he didn't at least try." Marcella shook her head, still smiling. "I mean, sure, Bastian got around a bit back then, but not with me." "So he didn't try? Or you weren't interested?" Giselle nudged her playfully. Marcella burst out laughing. All right. He did make a move once. It was early on. I had a boyfriend, told him right away, and he backed off. Totally chill about it. That's probably why we stayed friends. It never got awkward." She playfully ran her fingers through my hair, grinning. "Then Leela brought Dorian to that huge party junior year," she added, cracking up again. I still can't believe you thought that was a date, she said to Leela. How did you not realize she liked guys? Marcella turned back to Giselle, winding down her story. After Dorian came into the picture, that was it for me. I just knew. I gave her hand a kiss, and she beamed. Giselle chuckled. Yeah, I can see why you'd want to keep that locked down. You two are perfect together. She laughed again. Hope it's okay to say, your man's hot. Marcella grinned. Say whatever you want, just don't get bold about it. They both cracked up, and the rest of us followed suit. For a while, it felt like old times again. We'd always had this playful vibe, flirty but harmless, with unspoken boundaries none of us ever crossed. Every friend group has its own rhythm, and Giselle fell into ours like she'd been there all along. She and Marcella hit it off instantly, and everyone else seemed to warm up to her too. Even Tobias and Leela, who'd both been tense earlier, looked more at ease now. Still joking, the four of us guys moved into the living room. Leela trailed behind, still fixated on her phone, while Marcella, Hollis, and Giselle stayed back to handle the dishes. But the light mood didn't last. Tobias flopped onto the couch next to Bastian and blurted, Hey nerd, what's so fascinating on that phone? Playing another one of your lame games? When the word nerd came out of his mouth, I felt my jaw clench. Between me and him, calling each other that, or dork, or worse, was routine, part of our usual banter. But Tobias? He wasn't joking. That nickname stuck after a bad trip during senior year when he wouldn't stop going after Leela until Bastian and I had to step in and end it. Seriously, what was his problem? Leela glanced up for a second, then dropped her eyes again. Ugh, Ophelia's still in a meeting. No idea when she'll be done. She slipped her phone away and crossed her arms tightly over her chest. I shouldn't have bothered showing up. Keaton tried to reassure her. It's okay. She told you to come, right? You're good. I'm not worried she's mad or anything. It's not that. She paused and exhaled slowly. It's just hard. I'm happy to see you guys, yeah, but hey nerd, let's not make this depressing. Cut it out, Ty, Bastian snapped, his tone sharper than before. Keaton and I exchanged a look. He seemed just as caught off guard. Tobias raised both hands like he was innocent. All right, damn. He dug into his pocket like he'd suddenly remembered something. Let me get something to help her loosen up. As he rummaged, he shot Bastian a knowing glance and pulled out a small bag, some weed and a couple of joints, typical Tobias. Before anyone said a thing, he lit one and inhaled deeply. Between angry Tobias and mellow Tobias, I'd pick mellow every time. If this took the edge off, I wasn't going to complain. Bastian and Keaton didn't say anything, but they didn't look surprised either. After a few puffs, Tobias handed the joint to Bastian, then held out the second one, unlit, toward Leela. Here, this'll help you chill. She shook her head softly. Can't. Tobias sighed lightly, accepting it, and let it go. He hung out with Bastian and Keaton after that, keeping things low-key. They offered the joint to me too, but I declined. Weed always made me sick after the fact, and watching Tobias like this didn't make me mad, it made me kind of sad. We were never super close, not like he was with Bastian or Marcella, but we'd partied together enough. Bars, dorm hangouts, late-night nonsense. He used to be fun, honestly, but the rest of us had moved on, grown up. He hadn't. He still looked like the same guy from undergrad, maybe even high school. Bastian was still looking out for him, but if that ever changed... I didn't see him landing on his feet. Leela stood up. I need some air. I didn't need convincing. That sounded great. Inside, the others were getting into a football argument that Tobias would no doubt bulldoze. Not really my vibe. I'll come with, I said. We stepped onto the porch, facing the lake. No moon tonight, just dark water glittering with stars. We were both good at quiet. It came naturally. She wiped at her eyes, clearly drained. Leela? I asked softly. She glanced over, offered me a tired half smile. "I'm just worn out," she said quietly. "Talk to me." Leela had been my first friend in this group, and we'd stayed tight ever since. Her mouth opened, then closed again, her face pinched with the kind of pain you try not to show. "Can we not right now? I know you mean it, and I appreciate that. I just need a breather." I leaned a little closer, pulled her into a half hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Always." I considered asking more, nudging her into opening up, but whatever was going on, her job, her marriage, or just the weight of being back with this crowd, it all felt like stepping into something fragile. I held back. After a while, she finally said, "I don't think I can do a whole weekend of Ty. He's just too much." "Stick with me and Marcella tomorrow," I suggested. "We'll go for a hike, get out of the house. Ty'll be in the lake for hours like always, and we can chill. Maybe a movie later." "And then it's Sunday," she said. "He'll sleep in, we'll hang out, maybe squeeze in another movie, then dinner and we're out." She gave a small laugh. "Bastian's been keeping him on a pretty tight leash." "You noticed that too?" "Pretty sure everyone has," she said with a laugh. "I'm curious what's going on." "Maybe the new fiancé," I guessed. She didn't strike me as a big Tobias fan. "No clue why," she said, voice low. "Still, yeah, I'm wondering. After the whole Joel disaster, I didn't think Bastian would jump into something new this fast, let alone get engaged. I was stunned when he introduced her." "Same here," I said. But then loud laughter erupted from inside the house, breaking the moment. We both turned toward the noise. "Want to check it out?" I asked. "Not really, but we've got to go back eventually." She paused at the door, then looked at me. "Thanks, Dorian, for everything." I tousled her hair, and she smacked my arm with a grin. "You're the worst." "Let's go." As we walked back in, Hollis was mid-story, grinning from ear to ear. "So, yeah, opening up our marriage just felt like the right move." "What?" Leela and I blurted at the exact same time. Hollis and Keaton, that picture-perfect couple with PTA charm and Midwestern nice vibes, dropped a comment that brought the entire room to a halt before everyone burst out laughing. Giggling and clearly a bit buzzed, Hollis repeated herself. "Opening our marriage just felt right, like it made sense." As I settled onto the couch next to Marcella, she looked over at me and continued, "After everything that happened with Joel and Bastian, Keaton and I had some real talks. Not surface level, but deep stuff we'd never even touched on. All the what-ifs, the things we'd shelved for years." She gave Keaton's hand a quick squeeze, her face lit with affection. "We laid everything out. No filters. We were curious about seeing other people, sure, but not at the cost of what we've built. So we laid down some ground rules, gave it a shot." Keaton chuckled beside her. And surprisingly, it clicked. That got Marcella leaning in. "What kind of rules?" she asked, eyes wide. "Like, total free-for-all? Or are you doing couple trades? Or is Hollis just out here cucking you?" Tobias was already howling. Hollis rolled her eyes at him. "You're such a moron." "No, it's not like that. We do swaps, but it has to be consensual. We both get a say. Either of us can say no. We've never had to, though. We trust each other." "And it always happens under the same roof," Keaton added. "Sometimes in the same room, sometimes not. But we're always on the same wavelength." Marcella raised an eyebrow. "And jealousy? That's not an issue?" Hollis shrugged. "We're human. The first time was weird, sure. But we process everything together. And we always leave some time between experiences just to stay grounded in what we have." Keaton leaned in and kissed her neck. "The days after are the best," he said. "It's like falling in love all over again." "We're more transparent now than ever," Keaton continued. "Not only in terms of intimacy, but in everything. It's not necessarily forever, and it's definitely not for everyone. But right now, it works for us." Giselle turned to Bastian, who nodded at her silently. She spoke softly. We've been doing it too, though our version's a bit different. That got everyone's attention. Tobias's face tightened slightly, but Bastian just smiled. Joelle's cheating wasn't the hardest part, Bastian said. It was the lies. Then I met Giselle. He looked over at her. She gave him a warm smile. She told me right away that she's into both men and women, said she wouldn't feel honest if she had to pretend otherwise. She was up front from the jump, he went on. We set boundaries early on, and yeah, they've evolved. But the core principle, honesty, that's never changed. It's not always a swap. Sometimes it's a threesome. Sometimes just something low-key. But never anything behind the other's back. He kissed her quickly, and honestly, I've never been more content. It just works. As Bastian talked, Tobias's frown deepened. Bastian and Giselle didn't seem to notice, but the rest of us picked up on it. It was odd. Tobias, the guy who used to have the wildest college stories, suddenly looked unsettled. Leela, though, seemed to get it. It wasn't about what Giselle brought into Bastian's world. It was about what, or who, she kept out of it. Back in college, it wasn't just that Tobias hooked up a lot, he was strategic. He went for the women least likely to turn him down. Giselle, cool and kind with Bastian and relaxed with the rest of us, didn't seem like someone who'd put up with a guy like Tobias for even a second. Then Hollis chimed in, "Wait, you're into women too?" Giselle grinned. "Do you mean in addition to guys, or are you asking if you are too?" She smirked. "Maybe a bit of both?" Tobias blurted, "Jesus, Hollis, where was this version of you back in college?" She let out a wistful laugh. "Oh, I was around, just in hiding. I didn't know how to handle those feelings, what they meant, or how Keaton would take it." Keaton wrapped an arm around her, beaming. She leaned into him. "Sometimes it takes years to admit things to the people who matter most." She looked over at Giselle, took a slow drag from the joint, and added, "Yeah, I like women. Maybe not as much as men. But when we're with another couple and waiting on the guys, let's just say we don't sit around twiddling our thumbs." Giselle dragged her tongue across her bottom lip, eyes locked on Hollis. "Mind if I get a hit?" Hollis gave a nod, but Giselle didn't reach for the joint. She inched closer instead. "Not that kind of hit," Hollis murmured. The room went still. Hollis turned to Keaton, then to Bastian. Both men were smiling. Giselle caught Keaton's expression, returned it with a grin, and leaned in closer. Hollis took a breath, held it, turned toward Giselle, and kissed her. It was slow, deliberate, and unmistakably intimate. I felt Marcella's fingers slide up my thigh. The kiss didn't last long, but when they pulled apart, both were smiling. They turned to their partners, who welcomed them back with kisses of their own. On the far side of the room, Leela was frozen in place, wide-eyed. Tobias looked caught between lust and resentment. I glanced at Marcella. She seemed surprised, maybe a little turned on. When our eyes met, I caught a flicker of guilt on her face. Hollis and Keaton stood up, still holding hands. "We're heading out," Hollis said, her gaze steady on Giselle. Keaton gave a nod, his excitement clear. Hollis extended a hand. "You two want to come with?" Giselle accepted it with a smile and a brief kiss, and just like that, she let herself be pulled to her feet. Bastian rested a light hand on his fiancée's back, subtly steering the group toward the staircase. With a casual goodbye tossed behind him, he slipped away, leaving the rest of us to linger. Tobias jumped in without hesitation. "Hollis, think there's room for one more?" he asked with a hopeful grin. She spun around, a playful glint in her eyes. "Come on, Ty. You know the rule. Couples only." "Of course," he muttered, clearly disappointed. As he trailed after the others, he shot Marcella a grin, that signature one of his. She didn't even flinch, just shook her head no before I could say a word. Then he looked to Leela. "What do you say, Leela? Want to mix things up tonight?" She stood up immediately. "Not a chance, Ty. Her tone softened as she glanced at us. Sorry, Marcella. We didn't get to talk much. See you in the morning, yeah? Dorian later. With that, she disappeared upstairs with the rest. Neither Marcella nor I wanted to stick around with Tobias hovering, so we slipped off to our own room. From the next room over, the sounds of Bastian and Giselle laughing, and some not-so-innocent noises, filtered through the walls, drawing quiet, amused smiles from both of us. Marcella kissed me slowly, with intention, before murmuring, "Come here, baby. I want you," while slipping out of her clothes. I didn't need any more invitation. We'd always had this effortless rhythm. Marcella brought a fire and creativity to everything, and I never got tired of being near that kind of energy. She often said she liked not just how I looked, but how I was open, always game to try something new for her sake. Not like Tobias, all flair, no depth. That night, even with the sounds of our friends bleeding through the walls, we couldn't seem to stop. Marcella was free, uninhibited, and it happened more than once. At first we laughed about how loud the others were being, then it almost became a silent competition. When things quieted next door, it felt like maybe they were listening. When we paused, I'd already pulled 2 cries of pleasure from her lips. Afterward, she lay against me, her skin warm against mine, fingers idly tracing my chest. "You were on fire tonight," she said, still catching her breath. "So were you," I replied. "Trying something new?" She gave a soft laugh and nodded. Watching them kiss, it was kind of a turn-on. But Hollis, she's got this mom vibe, right? Seeing her with Keaton was unexpected. "Yeah, same here." She paused, then asked, "Do you think you'd ever want to try something like that?" I answered without hesitation. "No, I meant it when we made that promise." "They didn't really break theirs," she said. "Just change the rules a bit. Maybe that works for them, but not me." I looked at her. "Could you see yourself doing that? Watching me with someone else? Or being with someone else yourself?" Marcella shrugged faintly. "I don't think I could handle it. I'd get jealous." Then she laughed and covered her face. "But when Giselle looked at you earlier, I could have sworn she was ready to pounce. It kind of turned me on, knowing she wanted what's already mine." I laughed. "Pretty sure she was checking out Keaton too." "No, I don't think so," she said. "I think her eyes are mostly on Hollis. Keaton's just background noise. If you were with her, I'd feel like I didn't belong." My tone tightened. "You wouldn't be a third wheel. You'd be with Bastian." Marcella tilted her head, eyebrows raised. "You think I still think about Bastian?" "Maybe a little," I admitted. "Just like I wonder sometimes about Giselle or even Hollis. But I chose you, and I've never looked back." "Not even now?" She gave a small shake of her head. "Just sorting through my thoughts. I want this. I want you. I want a future, kids, and everything. I wouldn't throw that away for some moment with Bastian." "You're sure?" "I am," she said, smiling as she pressed her lips to mine. "I try to show you that every day. I won't bring it up again. Just curiosity." She kissed me again, and whatever doubts had crept in faded entirely. Then she gave me that look, the one that always meant trouble. "I think you've got one more in you." "Oh yeah?" She didn't need to wait for an answer. And soon enough, there was no room left in my mind for anything else. We slept in late the next day. Seemed like most of the house did too. When we finally made it downstairs, we exchanged sheepish grins with the others. Leela was already in the kitchen, humming as she cooked breakfast. Outside, we could hear the crack of a bat, Tobias probably. Keaton and Bastian were helping set the table, while I leaned back on the couch, flipping through movie selections for later. Hollis had music playing low in the background. Giselle and Marcella sat nearby, chatting about ordinary things, jobs, the weather, and the usual group dynamics. I found it a little strange how instantly they bonded. Though I couldn't say it was unexpected, Marcella always had this natural ease around people, and Giselle carried the same effortless charm. I tried to write it off as just that. Over breakfast, no one mentioned anything about the night before, but the subtle smiles and lingering looks between the couples told a story we weren't part of. The rest of us pretended not to notice. But then Tobias showed up, his expression tight with unease that he didn't bother concealing. It wasn't long before the silence collapsed under its own weight. Between mouthfuls of eggs, Tobias finally broke the quiet. "I'm heading down to the lake. Who's coming?" he asked. Most of our friends gave casual nods or murmured agreement. I leaned back and said, "I think Leela and I are going to hit the trail instead. Marcella, want to tag along?" Still bleary-eyed, my wife barely lifted her head. "Nah, go ahead. I'm way too sore for hiking today." Her comment hovered in the air for a beat. Then the table broke into giggles. Laughter followed, loud and unrestrained, except from Marcella, who turned bright red and stared at her plate. "That's not what she meant," I offered, trying to backpedal. But Marcella shoved her dish aside and buried her face in her palms. Oh my God, that only made everyone laugh harder. Hollis nearly choked, laughing. "Sure didn't sound like that last night." "Oh my God" was on repeat. I shot back. "Right, because you two were so subtle." "I thought the neighbors might call the cops," I joked, and Giselle leaned in close to Marcella, whispering loud enough for everyone to hear, "Girl, you are seriously lucky." She didn't take her eyes off me. There was something a little too direct in her gaze. I felt my face flush as another round of laughter rolled through the group. The teasing came to an abrupt end when Tobias suddenly stood, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. He slammed his plate in the sink and stalked off without a word. We shared a few looks, brushed it off, and finished eating before heading off to get ready. Back in our room, Marcella and I had a moment of our own. Her legs trembled under my touch, and her hands moved across me with a familiar hunger. I didn't want it to stop. She looked amazing in that swimsuit. But she smirked, stepped away, and said, "You're not dragging me out there with bedhead and sex haze. Go on, go." She gave me a light shove. "Check on Leela for me, okay? I think she could use someone to talk to. We've got all night." She gave me a wink. By the time we walked outside, most of the group was already in the water or sprawled across the dock, except Leela. The radio was mumbling something about NATO and Russia, nearly drowned out by Tobias's yell, "Put on some music, no more damn news." Not that I was paying attention anyway. Giselle bounced up beside me, glowing. Marcella's bikini left little to the imagination, but Giselle's was downright scandalous. I stayed calm, though her look made her intentions obvious. "Water's perfect," she said, voice like silk. "Tempting," I replied, motioning toward Leela. "But I've got plans." She gave a pout, but Marcella stepped in, kissed me, and tugged Giselle toward the lake. They darted past the thumping speakers and dove in with synchronized cannonballs. A few seconds later, Marcella emerged, gasping, "Freezing!" Leela and I laughed as we wandered toward the start of the hiking trail, walking past a weathered old shed before turning onto a narrow path that disappeared into the trees. There was something different about her now, something lighter. She was humming under her breath, bird guide tucked under one arm, binoculars in the other. "You're in better spirits," I said. She turned to me with a real smile. "I really am." "Did you talk to Ophelia?" I asked. Her smile faltered but came back quickly. "Nope, and I think I'm finally okay with that." She looked me dead in the eye. "I'm getting a divorce." I froze mid-step. "Wait, seriously?" My voice carried louder than I intended. "Shh, you'll scare off the birds," she teased, smirking. "I know it sounds abrupt, but it's not. If it were sudden, I wouldn't be calling it a divorce. This has been a long time coming." I stood still while she kept walking, only turning around after a few paces. I'd always believed Leela and Ophelia were inseparable. "What happened?" I asked, still stunned. She pointed toward a fallen tree, checked it for critters, and sat. I joined her. I shouldn't have said yes in the first place, she said, sounding more tired than upset. Didn't realize it then, but Ophelia has this pattern. Her friends probably saw it coming. None of them warned me, though. She's great at the beginning. Leela studied her hands. She's all charm and grand gestures, flowers, surprise dates, sweet little messages. It felt like a dream. But after the wedding, it just faded. Not right away, she continued. But by 6 months in, the romance was gone. By the second year, she forgot my birthday altogether. I know no relationship stays in the honeymoon phase forever, but it's like she just gave up. Her voice grew softer. We haven't been close in so long. I don't know if she's cheating or if she's just checked out emotionally, but either way, I've stopped fighting for it. She glanced up at the canopy above us. She was supposed to come on this trip, you know, said it might help us reconnect. Then she backed out last minute, claimed there was some urgent work thing. Haven't heard a word from her since. I tried to find something to hold on to. Maybe there's more going on, I said. Like that time last year, when you both had to cancel out of the blue? Leela let out a chuckle, but there wasn't a trace of humor in it. If it had just been about the trip, maybe she could have found something funny in it. But this ran deeper, like getting dragged under by a tide you didn't see coming. She'd stopped turning up for our talks, started bailing on the plans we made, doing everything people say not to do when you're trying to salvage a marriage. There was a sadness etched into her smile as she went on. Last night, she said softly, I was lying there in bed, crying over someone who clearly stopped loving me a long time ago, while the rest of you were out having a good time, laughing like everything was perfect. And it hit me hard. I should feel joy too. Not the kind you all have. I'm not chasing what the 6 of you have. But watching those couples be so close, it made me stop and wonder, what exactly have I been holding on to? Was it just a few crumbs of love? Hollow echoes of the promises she once made when we picked each other, back when it still felt like a choice? That's when something clicked inside me. I was done. Done with Ophelia and her empty affection. Done pretending around friends who never said a word. Done with a lifeless marriage and a job I stayed in out of fear, not purpose. No more letting fear dictate my steps. Because honestly, what could be worse than the place I'd let myself settle into? I just sat there, stunned, the words caught in my throat, until I finally said, Leela, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't. That's when the tears came, sliding down her cheeks, but she still managed a small smile through them. I know you didn't, she replied. I kept it from you. I chose not to share it. I wanted to be the one who had it figured out, the one who didn't crack under pressure. But it didn't work that way. Even so, all of you, you saw something in me. Maybe not the whole picture, but something. I just couldn't bear to let you see how much I felt like I was failing. I wrapped my arms around her, and that's when she broke. Not the kind of weeping that comes from despair, but the kind that floods out when someone finally puts down the burden they've carried alone for far too long. Hey, I whispered, holding her close. You don't ever have to pretend for me. We love you, Leela. Every single one of us. None of us would ever judge you. She clutched me tighter, her breathing slowing. I know, she whispered. I do. But knowing and being brave are different things. Like, I know ghosts aren't real, but if I'm watching a horror movie alone, I'll still run to turn the lights on. You know? It's the same with this. Did I think you'd judge me? No, not you. But was I scared anyway? She nodded slightly. Yeah, I was. I regret not telling you. Me too, I said. I wish I'd seen something. But you weren't scared to tell me, right? Not me? She shook her head. No, I wasn't afraid of you judging me, but I was scared you'd tell Marcella and… She trailed off with a sigh. I'm not blaming her, but… I let out a quiet laugh. I get it, She does love to talk. You could have just asked me to keep it private. You would have tried, Leela said, shaking her head. But no, I didn't want my mess to start bleeding into your life, or hers. My crumbling marriage didn't need to stain yours. Keeping secrets from her, or you, that wouldn't have been right, even if I begged you to. She pulled back just a little, offering me a faint, wry smile. You do your best, I know that. But honestly, you've always been… I cut her off with a mock groan. Predictable? A rule follower? Marcella says that all the time. No! Leela took a step back, clearly upset. Not with me, but with herself. That's not it at all. I'd never believe Marcella meant that in a bad way. You're different, not reckless like the rest of us, and that's a strength. She hesitated, then went on with more certainty. When I brought you into the group, it wasn't just a social call. I was this close to walking away. That night, that party, I wasn't just introducing you. I needed to know what kind of person you were. What are you saying? I asked. Leela took a breath and chose her words with care. Bastian, Keaton, Hollis, they're not bad people. I care about them. But something always felt incomplete before you joined. Sure, we laughed. We made memories. But something was missing. Bastian has charisma. He seems like he's leading the group, but he just follows whatever grabs him in the moment. Tobias is all about now, never tomorrow. Keaton's clever but twists facts to fit his version of truth. Hollis has got a big heart but lets too much slide. But you made Marcella better, and that means a lot. What I'm saying is, you're good. Not perfect, not boring, just steady. You care about what matters. You think about what's right, even when no one's watching. That's what they say about character, right? That's who you are. If Tobias is the engine and Bastian is the steering wheel, then you're the anchor. You don't slow us down. You keep us from spinning out. I blinked, taken off guard. So where does that leave you? I asked gently. Leela turned slightly, her voice quieter again. I'm the one in the back seat, she said. The one who never speaks up, always afraid. I pulled her into another hug. This time there were no tears, just the quiet release of someone finally telling the truth. She let out a deep breath against my shoulder. It feels good to finally say it, she whispered. There's a lot more where that came from. I'm here, I said. Whenever you're ready. I used to grumble nonstop during our college days. She laughed softly. I never really minded, I answered. She looked like she was about to explain, began with, It's just… But the rest faded as her eyes wandered to the trees. She didn't finish her thought. Instead, she gave a slight shake of her head and rose to her feet. Never mind, forget I said anything. With that, she grabbed her notebook and binoculars. Let's go do some bird watching. The comment was weak as jokes go, but it hit me just right. I laughed. We headed off down the trail, and every so often she would pause to hush me, peer through her lenses, and jot something down. I didn't mind at all, even though I could just barely make out the faint thump of distant party music. The sound was dulled by the woods and softened by the breeze. I found it comforting. These quiet walks were always what I looked forward to most on our lake house trips. The calm corners of the weekend, reserved for those of us who didn't care for the chaos. I was going to miss this. Leela noticed my silence and the way I'd gone still. You okay, Dorian? Yeah, I said slowly. Just thinking. You and I were right. This is probably the last time we'll come out here for a long while. Maybe we'll be back in 5 or 10 years, but honestly, I trailed off. I doubt everyone will still be around by then. She gave a nonchalant shrug, like the thought didn't bother her. That might not be the worst thing. If this is our final send-off, at least it started with a bang. Honestly, I mainly came back because of you and Marcella. Mostly you, though. If I never see Tobias again, I won't complain. Is it just me, or is he getting worse? I took a second to consider. I think it's more that he never got better. And now with him and Giselle at each other's throats constantly. Exactly, she said. God, what was the name of that girl he was hanging out with by the dock? I don't remember either. I've been calling her Cassidy in my head. That actually suits her, Leela replied, slapping away a mosquito that had settled on her arm. Would have been nice if she stuck around, might have kept him busy. He was killing the mood long before last night. And this morning? I thought he was going to explode. Wish he hadn't come at all, she muttered. Oh, what? Were you hoping to join the line of people fawning over Giselle? I teased. She rolled her eyes and smacked my arm in mock offense. No, she said quickly, then hesitated. Okay, maybe a little. I mean, she's stunning. But that's not really the issue. Her face took on a more thoughtful look. Not until I figure out my own stuff anyway. Still, I wouldn't miss her if she left. She's nice enough, don't get me wrong, but something feels off. I think Bastian made a mistake. I've been thinking the same, I admitted. He's fallen into the same old patterns, just like in college. Definitely not his brightest move. We were quiet for a bit after that. Then I spoke up, softer this time. I'm not sure how I feel about how fast she and Marcella got close. At first I thought it was sweet, but now it's weird. Did you know Marcella asked me last night if I'd be okay switching rooms so she and Bastian could stay together? Leela's mouth dropped open. You're kidding. She paused, eyes narrowed. Although, yeah, I can see it. She went on. Before you came into her life, Marcella had a wild streak. I didn't know her well back then, but people talked. Talked? I asked. I'm not trying to trash her, she said, half shrugging. Well, maybe a little. When she was into someone, she was all in. But when she wasn't, she'd play the game hard. Sorry, that probably doesn't help. A quietness followed, not just from the forest around us, but from the lake too. Everything seemed to pause. Between that stillness and the undercurrent of our conversation, a strange unease settled in my chest. Something about it just felt off. I don't hear the music anymore, I said. Should we go back? Yeah. We turned around. As we started walking, she said, You don't have to worry. Marcella cares about you. She wouldn't do anything to betray that. She knows where your boundaries are. I nodded, exhaled through my nose, and picked up the pace a little, not saying anything more. She didn't speak either. Her silence spoke volumes. If Leela had nothing to say, it meant she felt the tension too. That same intangible discomfort. Nothing specific, but it was there. As we drew closer to the lake, we heard voices and laughter through the trees. It eased some of that tightness in my chest. I realized how silly I'd been, half expecting to return to some dramatic scene. But when we stepped around the final bend near the house, there was no drama, just the others already splashing around in the water and no music playing. Hey! Marcella shouted, wading toward us, drenched and smiling. She wrapped me in a tight hug, soaking my shirt, but I didn't care, not with the kiss that followed. We were just about to come find you, she said brightly. Leela lifted her notebook, smiling faintly. Saw a lot of birds. Marcella's gaze lingered on our faces, especially Leela's, but she didn't say anything about it. I looked past her at the rest of the group in the water. What happened to the music? I asked. Tobias dropped the speaker in the lake, Marcella said loudly enough for everyone to hear. He and Keaton were messing around. I said I'm sorry, Tobias called from the water, his voice sulky. Marcella just rolled her eyes and offered a weary smile. You guys want to change and join us? The water feels amazing. I gave a small shake of my head. I desperately needed a shower. I felt dirty in every sense. Once I finished, the water would probably be too contaminated for anyone else to touch. Same, Leela said, echoing my sentiment. Kill the vibe, why don't you? Someone grumbled. Guess it's a plan for tomorrow. We all agreed, and before I could blink, Marcella leaned in, kissed me quickly, and sprinted back into the lake. That shower couldn't have come soon enough. The hot water hit like salvation. Both Marcella and I were still feeling the after effects of yesterday. I caught myself smiling, wondering whether her tiredness came from the travel or from how connected we'd gotten that night. Either way, it was unforgettable. I knew repeating it this weekend was unlikely, but the thought stayed with me, comforting and warm. I was so deep in that memory that I didn't notice the bathroom door creak open. When I finally pulled the curtain back, there stood Giselle. I jerked the curtain closed, heart jumping. "Chill, I'm not here to attack you," she laughed. "Just had to go bad. All the other bathrooms are taken." That didn't sit right with me. There were plenty of bathrooms. Even if they were in use, why not wait? Or ask Marcella instead. I heard the flush, then the sink running. "Crisis averted," she said casually. I cautiously peeked out. She was grinning. "Didn't mean to startle you, but the view wasn't bad." "Don't you have Bastion to keep you entertained?" I shot back, irritated. She smirked. "He does the job, but I'm not against raising the temperature a little. We're not exactly like Hollis and Keaton." "What's different?" I asked, suspicious. She leaned casually against the counter. "We don't tie each other down. If one of us wants to explore, we don't stop them." I gave her a sharp look. I already turned Marcella down. That's when she let her bikini top fall. What I'd been trying hard not to gawk at during the trip was suddenly right in front of me. She took a slow step closer to the shower. "Think I could sway you?" she asked, voice soft and seductive. I've been told I'm convincing. My body betrayed me before I could speak, but I still managed to get the words out. "No, this isn't happening." She traced her fingers up the curtain, stopping just shy of touching it. "Your loss," she murmured, voice barely audible. "Would have been incredible." Then her tone shifted, softer now. "It's okay. Some people just aren't built for it. Still, had to shoot my shot. Seeing what you've got going on, no wonder Marcella's always glowing." She retied her top, tossed one last cheeky glance over her shoulder, and strolled out laughing. "Jesus," I muttered under my breath. Once I'd cooled down and gotten dressed, I went to find my wife. She was outside on the porch, deep in a light-hearted discussion with Keaton about a show they both liked. The moment she spotted me, her face went through a rapid series of expressions, first joy, then concern, then anxiety. "We need to talk," I said evenly. "Babe, Keaton and I were just talking." "Now," I interrupted, already heading inside. I took the stairs without another word, and she followed. She left the bedroom door slightly ajar, maybe hoping it wouldn't get too intense, but I shut it firmly behind her. "What was that, Marcella?" My tone was firm, but I wasn't yelling. She blinked, caught off guard. "I didn't tell her to do that." "Stop," I said sharply. I paused to breathe, to center myself. "Start from the beginning." She sat on the bed, pale and hesitant. Finally, she spoke. "I wasn't scheming anything. She and I were chatting earlier, while you were out." I stood there, arms crossed, waiting. "I told her you and I talked about the whole partner swapping idea, and that you weren't into it. She asked if you'd get jealous. I said probably, especially if it was only about intimacy." Marcella scooted forward a bit, perching on the edge of the bed. "After that, she opened up about her thing with Bastion, said they have an understanding, and that if you weren't into couple swapping, she could just make you happy. Her exact words." Marcella gave a tiny, nervous smile. "And I thought, I mean, I've had a threesome before. You haven't." She said it like she was mentioning an old vacation. I stared at her. "So your bright idea was to send someone else into the bathroom with me? You thought, let's test out a little cheating just for kicks?" "Dorian, come on. You've watched those kinds of videos when you're alone. I figured maybe you'd actually want to live one." I let out a bitter laugh. "Right. So what? Was this your fantasy too? See, honey? Not so bad once you've tried it." She threw her arms up, sarcasm in full force. God forbid I try to hand you a fantasy on a silver platter. She's practically a model. What a terrible wife I am, right? Our voices were both raised now. It's not about being repressed, I barked. If Hollis and Keaton want to trade partners, cool. If Bastian and Giselle have an open thing, whatever. I jabbed a finger at my own chest. But that's not who I am. I never have been, and I'm not about to change. Then, more gently, I added, and those videos? That's all they are. Fantasies. If I were single, and two gorgeous women hit on me at a bar, sure, maybe I'd take that shot. But I'm not single. I'm married. To you. But my marriage? That was where I drew the line. Is that what you're trying to do? Erase all of this? Pretend like we're the same people we were before college changed everything? I can't do that. Marcella looked away. Not quite. But here we are, and she's into the idea. And you were right. It's probably our last wild night before we settle down and start trying for a baby. Her head moved slowly side to side. I thought maybe we could squeeze in one final reckless adventure, just the three of us. I laughed bitterly, and if you were okay with it, Bastian too. She and Bastian had already gone over the whole plan, just so you're aware. He's already said yes. Well, I haven't. You told me that last night, remember? My voice was sharp as I stared her down. Are you serious? You swore you'd let it go, and then you sent her to try to smooth things over. She didn't deny it, just averted her eyes. That said plenty. And now, after everything that happened tonight with you and Bastian, no. That wasn't what it looked like. She let out a long breath. I just wanted to fix what went wrong yesterday. That's all it was about. We all sat down and talked. Bastian said, and she agreed, that most men get weird about another guy being part of it. But another woman? That's different. I figured maybe you'd be okay with it too, based on the stuff you usually watch. But I'm not. I don't want another man in this period. Exactly. She let out a small laugh, and I cracked a reluctant smile. It broke some of the tension. I still didn't fully trust her, but she seemed genuine enough to make me lower my guard a little. I get what you're trying to say, but can you really blame me for being upset? You went around me, twisted the situation, and then sent someone else to clean it up for you. Most guys would be thinking about ending the marriage over something like that. Her eyes widened. Don't say that, please. That's not what I swear, I won't bring it up again, and I won't let anyone else stir it either. I thought. She sighed, voice quieter now. Like I said, one last crazy moment. You're not into that, and now I understand. It's not just about not wanting to share you with another man. I didn't see it before, but I do now. I'm sorry. She reached for me. Please, Dorian. I love you. Don't stay mad at me. I couldn't say I wasn't. I had every reason to be. But I still loved her. And she seemed genuinely remorseful. When I stepped a little closer, hesitating, Marcella moved to unbuckle my belt. I caught her hands gently and let out a sigh. Not now. I'm hurt, Marcella. That's not going to fix this. This was unfamiliar ground for her. I'm not complicated, and usually her charm was enough to patch things up. But not this time. I think she finally realized how deep the damage went. Instead of pressing forward, Marcella wrapped her arms around me, resting her head against my stomach. Oh God, I'm sorry. I really thought it was something you'd be into. Her voice trembled, close to crying. We stood there, me gently stroking her hair, both of us trying to calm down. Looking back, maybe I should have paused and really thought about how we went from me being furious to her needing comfort. But in that moment, it felt okay. Marcella wasn't always good at making the right choices, but I was the one who caught her every time she fell. That was how it had always been. She loved recklessly, and I forgave her. To be fair, we were still young, and she never made the same mistake twice. Eventually, I helped her up. She murmured another apology and slipped on a t-shirt and shorts. We rejoined the others on the porch, watching the last light fade over the lake. Tobias passed beers to me and Leela, and we tapped the bottles together. Giselle, now dressed like Marcella, glanced my way with a questioning look. "Are we okay?" I gave a solid nod, and she smiled, reassured. Marcella and Hollis stood arm in arm by the railing, Hollis still in her swimsuit, both of them watching the calm water. Leela had changed into a t-shirt and skirt, finally looking at ease, though her peace had little to do with clothes. We let the day wind down, laughing and swapping stories like old times. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the dock lights blinked on. Keaton called out from inside that dinner would be ready soon. We started moving in, but as soon as we stepped indoors, a strange and jarring sound cut through the air. An emergency alert, coming from the phones in Leela's hand and Hollis's bag. Leela, still chuckling from something Tobias had said, reached for her phone to mute it, but she froze. Her eyes scanned the screen quickly, then again. With each second, her expression twisted into panic. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God! Oh my God! No! No!" Hollis scrambled through her bag, frantically digging for her phone. Tobias, standing near Leela, muttered under his breath, "Oh crap." Then again, louder, more shaken, "Oh crap." "What is it?" I asked, stepping next to Leela, but she buried her face against my chest before I could see. Hollis let out a choked scream just as my eyes landed on Leela's screen. "Incoming missiles to U.S. Seek immediate shelter." It was really happening. I yanked the phone from Leela's hands, frantically searching through the browser, social apps, group messages, anything that could prove this was just a system bug. But all I got were endless spinning icons, failed load screens, or bizarre error messages. The connection was dead. Oddly, we still had bars, so why wasn't anything working? Keaton muttered a long string of curses, clearly having the same luck on Hollis's phone. I lowered my voice and said, "The network's overwhelmed. Everyone's trying to get online at once, and it's choking." I toggled the signal down from 5G to LTE, hoping for better luck. Still no response. We all gathered closer, fixated on the unresponsive screens. Giselle, shaking, asked, "Is this like that false missile alert in Hawaii a few years ago?" Leela, looking drained, mumbled, "Yeah. They changed the protocols after that so it wouldn't happen again." She dropped into a chair, like the act of speaking had exhausted her. "Oh God. What was she talking about? What talk?" Bastian blurted, his voice rising. "She said she couldn't come because there was too much talking." "What did that mean?" "She didn't say anything else," Leela replied, her voice unsteady. "I just thought she was blowing it off." She buried her face in her hands with a shaky groan. "Damn it." Then Tobias suddenly punched the wall, cracking the plaster, before stomping over to the liquor shelf. Bastian snapped, "Now? Seriously?" Tobias spun around, uncorking a bottle and taking a deep swig. "Best time if you ask me. Either we're toast or we're not. Either way, I'm drinking." Bastian glared but said nothing. Then Marcella asked, "Do we have any other way to check?" "The TV, maybe?" she offered. Bastian shook his head grimly. "No cable box, and the stereo's useless." He shot a look at Tobias. "Not that it matters. Someone thought it was smart to throw the radio in the lake." "I said I was sorry," Giselle yelled back. "Well, that's not exactly helping now, is it?" I snapped, sharper than I meant to. They all turned to me. Tobias looked like he wanted to respond, but caught the expression on my face and bit it back. Silence settled in, broken only by Hollis muttering prayers to herself as she tapped away on her screen, desperate. She looked ghost pale, her breaths short and fast. "Hollis," I called. No reaction. I raised my voice. "Hollis." Her eyes finally lifted, wide and dazed, flooded with terror. "We need you to focus," I said softly. "There's an emergency kit in the kitchen. Do you remember where it is?" She gave a slow nod. Yeah, I think so. Giselle, can you help her look? Maybe there's a hand crank radio, I said. Giselle took her hand, leading her off to the kitchen to search beneath the sink. As soon as they were out of sight, I turned to Keaton. If this is real, how serious could it be? Keaton, the group's go-to guy for geopolitics and war history, just as obsessive with it as Tobias was with sports, rubbed his face. Hard to say, he murmured. If it's just one missile, maybe North Korea or Iran, it's probably something our system can intercept. Retaliation would be conventional, targeted, limited. But if it's more than that, we've got a real problem. Our defense grid isn't built to handle a large-scale strike. He hesitated, like saying the next part might make it happen. If we're under full attack, the system will prioritize major population centers and critical infrastructure. And then we'd respond. Big. Russia or China would too. But we're out here in the middle of nowhere, Bastian said, trying to grasp at something hopeful. Keaton gave a tight, uneasy smile. Back during the Cold War, they built missile silos in rural areas, fewer civilians nearby. Some of those sites are still active. He glanced toward the dark woods and the lake beyond. We might be close to one. So, how can we tell if we're actually in danger? Tobias asked, voice tense. Leela spoke up quietly. The power. If the grid shuts down, that's our sign. Keaton nodded. Yeah, if the electricity cuts out. That was when everything went dark. Screams erupted, some sharp and brief, others drawn out and panicked, but everyone shouted. After the chaos, the sounds faded into fragments. Hollis's sobs from the kitchen, Marcella weeping quietly, Tobias muttering curses, Leela whimpering softly. My own heart thudded so loudly I could barely hear the rest. Keaton and Bastian stumbled through the dark toward the kitchen, bumping into furniture in search of their partners. Tobias just tilted the rum bottle back and drained more of it. And there I was, standing with two women barely holding it together, while I was just barely doing any better. I had to make a call, and I chose my wife. It hurt, but Leela had been shaken earlier. Marcella looked like she was moments from shattering. The others returned a few minutes later, arms full of whatever they could find. They'd located some candles. Keaton had one in hand and helped Hollis along, who kept mumbling about her kids. Giselle followed behind with another. Bastian came in last, carrying a small cardboard box and setting it down. We found some candles, he said, voice grim. No radio, though. Our supplies were basic: matches, a small first aid kit, a flare gun with limited rounds, and a handful of water bottles. That was all we had to work with. Maybe it's just a tripped circuit or something stupid like that? Marcella asked, her voice laced with desperate hope. Could be, Bastian answered, though his tone betrayed his doubt. But take a look out there. We all turned toward the window. The opposite shoreline was swallowed in blackness. The entire power grid had failed. There's still a few lights over that way, Marcella pointed out, clinging to optimism like a life raft. Leela spoke quietly, almost to herself. Might be emergency backups. I saw a couple solar panels earlier when I got here. How much time do we have? Giselle voiced the question no one else dared ask. Keaton didn't respond immediately. He breathed in deep, then exhaled slowly. No real way to know. Could be over in minutes. An hour if we're lucky. 2 at most. If we make it to sunrise, we might be safe. But without power? He didn't finish the thought. I'm going upstairs. Hollis needs to rest. And I could use some sleep, too, he added, his voice tight with exhaustion. The candlelight caught a wet shimmer in his eyes. He and Hollis ascended the stairs in silence, weighed down by emotions the rest of us could only imagine. Once they disappeared from view, Leela stood up. She opened her mouth, tried to speak, but nothing came out. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks. Eventually, she just walked out, made her way to the dock, and laid flat on her back, eyes locked on the stars above. A heavy silence settled in. Then Tobias finally broke it with a long sigh. Damn. It summed it all up. But then, in true Tobias fashion, he ruined the mood by chuckling. So, who's up for one last crazy night? He said, shooting a glance at Giselle. Her jaw fell open. I'm pretty sure mine did too. He was winding up to say more, but Giselle didn't let him. Shut it, idiot. Are you really still trying to hit on me? We could be dead in an hour, and that's what you're thinking about? I've told you so many times. Never gonna happen. Nukes could drop, and if it were just you and me left on Earth, I still wouldn't touch you. Not even with your sad excuse of a... I doubt anyone had ever spoken to Tobias like that. He was used to people backing off. Tall, built like a tank, someone who relied on his presence to dominate a room. Most people never challenged him. What did you just call me, gold digger? He shot back, furious. Giselle laughed, harsh and cold. That's rich, coming from the guy who's been mooching off Bastion since this whole thing began. I never took a cent from you after we split. And you call me a gold digger? She wasn't backing down an inch. I'm with Bastion because he has guts. You're just a steroid cocktail wrapped in insecurity. Maybe if you weren't chemically scrambled all the time, you could have actually kept someone. Tobias stepped forward, fists clenched. Say it again. I dare you. Before it escalated, Bastion stepped in between them. Touch her, and we've got a problem, he warned. Tobias's eyes narrowed. I'm trying to protect you, man. She'll wreck you like Joelle did. Bastion didn't blink. I don't need your protection. He added, colder now. Haven't needed you in years. That hit Tobias hard. His expression collapsed. But I thought... Bastion didn't look away. Tobias stopped trying to justify himself and turned his fury back to Giselle. You ruined everything, he growled. Then he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I thought I caught a glint of tears as he left. Bastion let out a sigh. Giselle gently placed a hand on his arm, whispered something soft. He gave her a small, grateful smile before looking over at me and Marcella. Sorry you had to witness that, but it's been a long time coming. Then he smiled again, this one tinged with sorrow. Tobias wasn't totally wrong. If this is really it, I'm glad to be with people who matter. His eyes weren't on me. They were locked on Marcella. And there's no one I'd rather share this moment with. Bastion. Marcella looked over at me. It's ending, Marcella, he said, voice hushed. Do you want to leave this life never knowing what could have been? Remember when we talked about what we would have done if we'd met earlier? I couldn't stay quiet. She's not available anymore, you bastard, I snapped. Bastion only lifted a shoulder in a shrug. Neither are we. Didn't stop us before. He looked straight at me. Dorian, I get it. You and Giselle are together. You love each other. That's real. But don't be so afraid of judgment that you deny what's true. Don't cling to safety when tomorrow might not come. Then he turned to Marcella. Let her be happy. You should be happy too. If you believe me about anything, believe me about this. Giselle's worth it. But Giselle cut in sharply. Then go be with her already. Bastion, he's not into this. Stop, Giselle, Bastion said firmly, still locked on Marcella. This isn't about you. It's about her choice. He extended his hand toward Marcella. No guilt, no past, just this one moment. Let's see what might have been, even if it's all we ever get. I didn't move, just watched Marcella, watched the conflict in her eyes, her glance bouncing between me and the man she once imagined a life with. Then I saw her take a single step forward. Marcella, I whispered. She looked my way briefly, hesitating before stepping toward him. Her expression silently apologized, though her posture remained resolute. I'm sorry. What he's saying makes sense to me right now, she said. I love you, Dorian, truly, but I have to see this through on my own. Her voice wavered. Go with Giselle, just leave. Before I could speak, Giselle jumped in, not addressing Marcella, but aiming her words directly at Bastion. This isn't right. I don't destroy people's lives. It's called ethical non-monogamy for a reason. It's not about hooking up without consequences. He was supposed to be your friend, I growled, anger finally taking hold. Not anymore, I said. He's dead to me now. That's it. I turned to Marcella, grasping for something, anything to say, but nothing came out. If you go through with this... The sentence died in my mouth. What was left to say? Mention divorce? Bring up rebounds or regrets? None of it mattered if she was already leaving. She'd made her mind up. Even talking about ending our marriage wouldn't change that. And the idea of her seeing someone else, she'd floated that possibility more than once before. I've never been the type to get violent just because I'm hurting. Sure, I've imagined it when I'm pissed, but I haven't thrown a punch since I was a kid. When someone betrays me, I cut them out. That's it. And if someone I love decides I'm not who they want anymore, I won't fight for them, not even my own wife. I had all these furious, chaotic thoughts while I stared at them, but that's all they were. Thoughts. I wasn't going to act on them. Marcella didn't meet my gaze. She knew exactly what she was doing when she followed Bastian upstairs, and she knew I wouldn't stop her. That was the worst part. Realizing my pain meant less to her than her need for answers, or closure, or whatever she thought she was chasing. As she climbed the stairs, she called over her shoulder, "Giselle, please stay with him. Help him understand this doesn't have to be terrible." Giselle didn't take that well. Her response was a barrage of furious insults. Then they were gone. "Dorian," Giselle said softly, the same tone she'd used on Bastian during his darkest spirals. She reached out for my hand. "Don't touch me," I snapped, voice sharp as glass. "Tobias was right about all of you." "That's not true," she murmured, but I didn't want to hear it. "You wrecked everything," I said flatly. She tried to explain, but I shut her out. "Just leave. Take your little experiment, Bastian, Marcella, Hollis, Keaton, and get the hell out. I'm disgusted." I collapsed onto the couch, stomach knotted in misery. "Just go." Giselle lingered for a moment, then finally turned and walked away. I didn't watch her leave. The silence that followed was brutal, so complete it was suffocating. Every little noise felt like a knife. Tobias was still outside. I could hear his bat connecting with something solid, venting his fury. Upstairs, muffled sobs echoed, two people crying together. Outside, crickets sang, and the wind whispered through the trees. Then I heard a sound I couldn't bear, his low voice and her laugh. That private, secretive laugh she used when we snuck around her parents' house. It hit like a backhand to the face. I couldn't stay. Not in that house. Not with them upstairs. I chose the back door without thinking. Maybe I should have found Leela down at the dock, let her be the one to comfort me. But I couldn't. I didn't want her sympathy, no matter how sincere. Rage was easier to carry than kindness. So I ran. I thought I could burn off the fury, maybe play rough with Tobias or provoke him until he knocked me out. Either one sounded fine. I didn't notice right away that something was wrong. Tobias's bat was lying abandoned on the ground, but Tobias? Nowhere to be seen. Then I heard it, a woman's scream. "Please stop!" Giselle. My chest tightened. I didn't want to believe it, but a sick feeling told me otherwise. Tobias, when drunk, could be dangerous. But this? I remembered the betrayal, the one Bastian and Marcella had just dealt me. It made me question how far Tobias might go towards someone he resented. I grabbed the bat. If he dropped it, things had gone too far. I'm a big guy, but Tobias is bigger, and the darkness was thick, no moonlight to help me see. If I had to chase him through the woods, I might get lost. Only the stars gave me a faint outline of a path. My vision slowly adjusted. Two shapes emerged near the old woodshed, one towering, the other trembling. I crept closer, hoping Giselle's cries would mask the sound of my steps. She noticed me first. Her eyes went wide, pleading. Tobias, blind with rage, shouted, "Small dick, huh? I'll show you what small really looks like." Giselle was begging him to stop. He wasn't listening. Her shirt was torn, and he had her pinned against the shed. One massive hand gripped her neck, the other fumbled with his belt. I gave her the smallest signal. Don't move. As her body went still, Tobias sensed something behind him. He started to turn. Too late. I swung the bat hard, catching him across the jaw. Not the skull, just enough to knock him out. He dropped instantly, still breathing, unconscious. Giselle screamed, then kicked him, once, twice, again. I didn't stop her. I opened the shed door, trying to ground myself, to think clearly. Knocking him out was one thing. Leaving him to die was something else entirely. We need to move him, I said. She gave him one last kick, then helped me drag him inside. He felt lighter than he should have. Maybe the adrenaline gave us strength. Before walking off, Giselle spat on him. She didn't look back. I stood there alone for a moment, staring at the woodshed. Memories I'd buried came rushing back. As a final act of something that once resembled friendship, I rolled Tobias onto his side. Just in case he threw up while unconscious, he wouldn't choke on it. Then I pulled the shed door shut with a hard thud and jammed a baseball bat horizontally through the handles to keep him inside. Giselle was nearby, shivering in the cool breath of a lake night that still clung to the tail end of summer. She looked both frozen and electrified by adrenaline. Her shirt hung in tatters, Tobias's doing, and she crossed her arms, trying to hide what she could. I peeled off my own shirt and handed it over. She whispered a quiet thanks as she slipped it over her head. Still trembling, she asked, "What if he gets out?" I walked to a tree stump where an axe rested, half buried in old wood, and yanked it free. I held it up without a word. Her face drained of color, but she gave a faint nod. Then, without warning, a set of headlights cut across the clearing. Leela hurried toward us, her voice sharp with concern. "Dorian, I thought I heard someone screaming. What the hell happened?" Her eyes swept the scene, quickly piecing it together. She turned to Giselle, her expression clouded. "Are you hurt? Did I just interrupt something I shouldn't have?" That's when Giselle broke. The adrenaline washed away, and everything hit her at once. Dorian helped me. Bastian and Marcella went upstairs, and then there was yelling, and Tobias. He attacked me. Her shaking hand pointed toward the locked shed. Leela's jaw dropped. "Oh my God," she breathed, barely audible. "Jesus, we've got to get you inside." She turned to me. "Dorian, can you—" I shook my head quickly, cutting her off. "No, I can't go back in there." I held out the axe to her, handle first. "Not while I'm holding this. I don't trust myself with it. Just get her to safety. I need space. I can't be near any of that right now." I didn't have the energy to explain more. Leela took the axe from me with care. "All right, I will, but promise me you won't do anything reckless." I nodded, unsure if I meant it. "Go to the dock," she said gently. "I'll find you soon." I turned without another word and headed for the lake, not knowing what I was looking for. The forest was one option, the water another. But the lake offered a view, a wide, quiet place to witness endings. When I got to the edge of the dock, I stood there, toes over the rim, staring into the dark surface. Why not just let myself drift out into the lake and keep going until I couldn't anymore? We were all destined to fade. What did it matter how soon it happened? Why keep enduring, carrying the weight of knowing that my wife didn't love me enough to stay faithful? Maybe in another world, at another time, I could have forgiven, started over. But war far away and betrayal up close had taken that from me. Now all that remained was the ache. No resolution, no quiet end, just wounds that refused to close. "No," I said to the night, the lake, the ghosts of every person who had ever broken me. If pain was all I had left, I'd hold it close. Let the pretend sunrise come and take it if it could. I kicked off my shoes and sat down on the dock, feet dangling over the edge into the cold lake. The water touched my skin like an old memory. Cheap camping trips with the family, the kind that felt huge back then. I wished I could call my parents, just to say I love them. I wished I could tell my sister how proud I was of her. She made it through med school. I wondered if she was okay, back at her hospital, facing the chaos head-on. I hoped she was. "I love you," I said, voice low, not meant for anyone, and meant for everyone. Maybe the words would find their way. That's when Leela appeared beside me, 2 bottles in hand. "I love you too," she said, offering me one. I laughed under my breath, surprised at my own sudden embarrassment. Then I looked at her and realized how absurd that emotion was right now. "I've just been thinking," I started, "about everything, all of it. What's happened, what's still happening." She gave a quiet, mournful smile, drinking instead of replying right away. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then she finally spoke. "You know, I had just decided to be brave," she said. She exhaled, took another swig. "To treat this life like it was the only one I had, like it mattered. And then—" She let the sentence fade, shaking her head. As she stared out across the lake, I toyed with my wedding ring, rolling it between my fingers like I always did when I drifted into thought. Then I slid it off and held it up to the moonlight. A promise meant to last forever. But the middle was hollow, and that's the thing about symbols. They're only real when we give them meaning. "Would you still—" I began, but I stopped myself, laughed at how pointless the question sounded now. I mean, if Ophelia had told the truth about why she didn't come, would you still have left her? "Yeah," she said without hesitation. "That wasn't the beginning. It was the final crack. Everything else was already broken." She motioned vaguely, like words couldn't reach the root of it. "None of what came before just disappears. And you—" She turned toward me, her expression tight with hurt and fury. "Would you leave Marcella? Without question. There's no way to undo it." I took a sip from my bottle and added, "Maybe if I hadn't been here, if this night hadn't happened, and I found out later, I could have told myself she just needed someone, that it was comfort, not betrayal." I shook my head. It would have stung, sure, but I might have found a way forward. But that's not what happened. She looked at me, saw me, and still went upstairs with him. So yeah, I'd leave her now, if I could. Leela slipped off her rings and cradled them in her palm like delicate truths. Then she nodded at the water. "To let go?" she asked. I smiled, genuinely, for the first time that night. To let go. Together we hurled the rings out into the dark water. 2 soft splashes, and they were gone. Leela laughed, a sound half relief, half disbelief. "God, that actually felt good," she said, taking another drink. She glanced over, eyes shining with something bittersweet. "Did I ever tell you how I came out to my parents?" She let out a quiet laugh. "No, I haven't. I've never really opened up to anyone about all of it." Leela's gaze locked with mine. Her dark eyes glistened, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "Can I be a little reckless before I leave? Will you be there for me?" "Of course," I said, instantly, no doubts. She drew in a long breath and turned toward the dimly lit town, where a few scattered lights still flickered. My parents had an arranged marriage. Dad moved here to take a teaching job, and Mom followed, already pregnant with me. They got along, respected each other, maybe even cared in their way, but it was never like the stuff in romance novels or on the screen. Maybe that's why Ophelia drew me in so much, her energy, the way she lived without hesitation. Strange that I'm just now realizing it. She took a beat. "When I was in high school, they told me they'd picked a husband for me, a wealthy guy from a good family. I was floored. It felt unreal. My mom's always been pretty conservative, so her being thrilled didn't surprise me. But my dad? He was the open one, even here in the States. Still, I think she convinced him. I never expected they'd actually push something so old-fashioned on me. It just didn't sit right. I pushed back hard. I even flew to Mumbai to meet the guy and his relatives, to prove I wasn't rejecting it blindly. A small, almost nostalgic smile crept onto her face. He wasn't a bad person, but I told them I was gay. Leela stopped again. That's what I told them anyway. My mom lost it. But my dad backed me up. Not long after, I found out he'd loved someone else before he married my mom. Their marriage hadn't been about passion. I think he wanted to keep me from repeating his mistake. That was his way of supporting me. But for me, that wasn't the full truth. She lowered her eyes, struggling to hold back more tears. I wasn't being truthful. Not with them, and definitely not with myself. The reality is, I'm not only into girls, I like guys too. Maybe even more. I blinked in surprise. Wait, really? My laugh came out a little awkward. Tears spilled freely down her face now. I lied. To them. To everyone. I kept waiting, figuring I'd sort it all out in college. But instead, I jumped into a relationship right away. With a girl. We stayed together until sophomore year. That summer I stayed behind for some extra classes. And that's when I met you. She gently placed her hand on my shoulder. Please don't get the wrong idea. When I say I love you, I mean platonically. I'm not hiding some romantic confession. Then she laughed again, light but tinged with sadness. Not trying to make this more awkward than it already is. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. I've been carrying this lie around for years. I just needed someone to hear the truth. You remember that party? The one where you met Marcella? That night was supposed to be a turning point for me. I wanted to try being real. But then Marcella came over and asked me if I'd seen anyone interesting. And I froze. I thought about my parents, my dad. Would he be disappointed? Would my mom try to arrange something again? Would you laugh at me? So I didn't say a word. I backed out. On myself. Her laugh this time was brittle. Then I ended up marrying Ophelia, and everyone acted like my sexuality no longer mattered. But it still did. I was still pretending. And pretending was easier. She turned her face away from me, her voice breaking a little. If you're upset, or think I wasted your time, or wish I just kept pretending, I get it. I'm sorry, for all of it. Her voice cracked with a shaky laugh. Actually, that's not completely true. I didn't just want to tell someone. I wanted to tell you, after we became real friends, not just classmates. But I didn't want to ruin what you had with Marcella. Hey, I said softly. You should know, there's no world where I'd ever hate you, Leela. That's the first thing. I do wish you'd been able to tell me, but I get why you didn't. It's crazy, isn't it? I added. How that one night could have played out so differently. If Marcella hadn't corrected me, or if you'd said something. Who knows? She shook her head gently. You looked at her before she even said a word. I saw it. That, and everything else. It just didn't feel like a battle I could win. That's not fair, I said, and when she tried to cut in, I pressed on. Yeah, Marcella's gorgeous, but you were the one I came with. You were supposed to be my date. At least, that was how I saw it. She exhaled a soft laugh. I really liked you that night. I was so excited to go with you. You have no idea how hard I was crushing. She laughed again, this time more freely. Trust me, it was mutual. I smiled, a little sadly. Even though I ended up falling for Marcella, still love her if I'm honest, it wasn't the same. If it didn't hurt so much, I might think I never really loved her. But I did. I do. I paused. Still, what you and I had, it felt like something deeper. Not that it changes anything now. What do you mean? She asked quietly. I mean, maybe we wouldn't have lasted, but things could have turned out differently, maybe even better. She nodded slowly, her eyes scanning the still water in front of us. Yeah, Different would have been nice. I followed the direction of her gaze. All we could see was the calm expanse of dark water, its surface flecked with scattered starlight. But we were wrapped in that stillness together. After a few seconds, her voice quietly cut through the silence. "Can I ask you something else?" "What is it?" I turned toward her. "It's just, I feel like a teenager again, like when I asked you out back in college." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, clearly unsure. "I've actually never kissed anyone before. I think I want to know what it's like." "You're serious?" I let out a soft, surprised laugh. Her smile dropped immediately. "Forget I said that. It was dumb." "No, Leela, hold on. I'm serious. I want to." And I meant it. We shifted toward each other, the space between us slowly shrinking. She gave a quiet, sheepish laugh. We both closed our eyes as we leaned in, nerves making us hesitant. The kiss started tentative, careful. More of a connection than a spark, like something gently unfolding between two old friends. Then she leaned closer, and I matched her, our mouths parting slightly, moving in a rhythm that felt unfamiliar but easy. Her fingers brushed against my cheek. A quiet sound escaped her throat. I could feel her, the warmth of her breath, her taste, the nearness of her body. Then the sky split open with a sudden flash. Lightning cracked overhead. We both jumped apart, startled, then burst out laughing, breathless from the jolt. But the pull between us snapped right back. We closed the gap again, this time with urgency, mirroring the storm building around us. Her eyes darted around the dock as she suddenly pulled back. "Oh no!" She rushed toward the heap of clothes we'd left behind, tossing aside damp fabric until she found her phone. Her face shifted the moment she looked at the screen. "I've got a signal." I leaned in to see. No new messages, but the 5G icon glowed. "Call 911, I said. "Keep trying until someone answers. We need answers, and we need help." I stood, digging through the mess for my shorts and yanking them on. "Where are you going?" she asked, worried. "To the house," I replied. "If no one picks up, I'm getting the flare gun. Maybe we can still get someone's attention." Her expression softened slightly, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Maybe," she murmured. Then, "Hey." I looked back. She pulled me into a sudden, intense kiss. "I love you," she said firmly. "That's true. No matter what happens." "I love you too," I said. "Hang in there." I sprinted off the dock, up the steps, and shoved the front door open. Inside, Giselle, Hollis, and Keaton were descending the stairs. Keaton had the axe I'd originally handed to Leela. "What's going on?" he asked. "I don't know yet," I said. "Town's lit up again. Leela's trying 911. Heard anything?" Hollis was already on her phone, her face tight with focus. But behind her worry, her determination was ironclad. Nothing would keep her from her children. I dove into the storage box by the door, grabbed the flare gun and the cartridges, just as I heard movement from upstairs. Looking up, I saw Bastian standing at the top, shirtless in only gym shorts. Right behind him stood my wife, wearing nothing but his shirt and her underwear. Her face went pale the moment she saw me. "Dorian," she said quietly. "What's happening?" I didn't answer. I checked the flare gun, loaded a shell, and turned to Keaton. "Go check on Tobias, but don't, under any circumstances, open the shed." Keaton nodded, gave Hollis a quick hug, and left with the axe. "Why the hell is Tobias in the shed?" Bastian demanded. His girlfriend looked ready to explode. "Because your buddy tried to hurt me," she said, her voice flat. "What?" Giselle stepped in, her face full of disbelief and fury. "You heard me, Bastian. I warned you about Tobias. You didn't listen." "He's just being Tobias," Bastian replied defensively. "So he has a crush. Can you blame him? Look at you." He glanced my way. "If Dorian hadn't been there?" Giselle's voice cracked. "If Dorian hadn't been there, I don't even want to think about what might have happened." Bastian fell silent. She recoiled when he tried to reach for her. "Don't touch me," she said, tears in her eyes but strength in her voice. She took off her ring, held it up between them. "I loved you, Bastian. I truly did." Then her expression hardened. "But if you choose to keep someone around who scared me, who crossed the line after I warned you, and you do nothing—" She let the ring fall. It hit the floor with a sharp metallic sound. "Giselle?" he began, but she was already turning away, walking toward me. "What's the plan?" she asked. "Tell me how I can help." Bastian's face contorted with anger. "That's it? You're just walking away?" He stepped closer, raising his voice. I met his glare. "We're doing what we have to. Stay with Hollis until Keaton's back. Make sure she's okay." "Hey!" he yelled, stepping up like he wanted a fight. "I'm talking to you." I didn't flinch. "You better hope I keep pretending you're not." He froze for a second, then puffed up like he was trying to act tough. "You didn't say a damn thing when I was sleeping with Marcella. You're not gonna do anything now." My teeth clenched so hard my jaw throbbed. Behind him, Marcella whispered, "Oh no." Hollis looked up, her gaze distant, reflecting the storm I was barely holding in. Even Bastian seemed to grasp the magnitude of his screw-up. Cheating was bad enough. But this? The tension in the room was electric, like a fight was seconds from erupting, and truthfully, part of me wanted it to. I was right on the edge, but I reined it in, exhaled slowly, and stared at them again. When I finally spoke, my tone was steady, but sharp with anger beneath the surface. "I didn't hit you, Bastian. You know why? Because it's not right." I stepped toward him, and he instinctively retreated. He was used to Tobias shielding him from consequences, but now it was just the two of us, and he was realizing fast that he was out of his depth. I could have hurt him that night, and I'd be lying if I said the thought hadn't crossed my mind. Ty's bat, the axe out back, plenty of ways I could have gone there. No one would have been quick enough to stop me. I glanced around. Especially not you, Bastian. Everyone had their eyes on me now. I let a crooked grin creep across my face as I looked down at him. But you know what? Just my hands felt like enough. Wrapping them around your throat, pounding you into the floor until you couldn't stand. That would have satisfied something ugly in me. I paused, letting that settle. But I didn't. Because that's not who I am. And no matter how much I wanted to be someone else tonight, I couldn't become that person. Then I turned toward Marcella. "And you, I could have hit you too. I never have. Never would hurt a woman. But what you pulled, that might push someone past their limit. You have no idea how close I came to wiping that pathetic look off your face. But I didn't want your apology. What I really wanted was for you to have never betrayed me in the first place." Her breath hitched, her words small and guilt-soaked. That fear in her eyes, that's what I needed. My voice softened a little, almost reflective. "I imagined all sorts of things, but I never acted on them. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't raise a fist. I didn't become Tobias. I didn't torch the house or wreck the whole place. I stayed on the right side of the line, not out of fear of consequences, but because it's the right thing to do. You all, Tobias included, acted like you've got no sense of decency. And why? Because deep down, you're selfish. You pretend to care when people are watching, but the second no one is, you chase whatever you want, no matter who it hurts." I paused and looked directly at Giselle. "I was out of line with you," I admitted. "You weren't part of this. My anger got the best of me and I lashed out. That was on me. You're a decent person. I might not live the same way you do, but at least you're open about it. Like you always say, ethical non-monogamy. It's right there in the phrase." She laughed a little, letting me know we were good. Marcella tried to explain herself. I saw how happy Bastian was with Giselle, and Keaton with Hollis, But before she could finish, Hollis sprang forward and slapped her hard across the face. It happened so fast, I barely registered it. Clutching her cheek, Marcella stared at Hollis, stunned. Hollis's voice came out furious and sharp. "Don't you dare lump what you did in with what Keaton and I have. Yeah, we trade partners, but it makes us stronger, not weaker. I'd never betray Keaton the way you blindsided Dorian. You're a coward. A selfish, rotten coward." For a second, I thought she might hit her again, but instead, she turned to me. "I'm sorry, Dorian. Truly. If Keaton and I crossed any lines—" "You didn't," I said firmly. I wanted her to know she had nothing to feel guilty about. Whatever she's spinning, she made that call alone. I raised my hand, my left, where my ring used to sit. It was gone. Marcella gasped. "No. What did you do? Where's your ring?" "It's at the bottom of the lake," I told her. "Sunk into the mud with the rest of our wrecked marriage." Her voice cracked, her tears coming fast. "No. Please, no." It felt like we'd hit the last page of our story. Maybe this is how it ends. Maybe it's not. I honestly don't know anymore. Maybe the world's about to go up in flames. But none of that changed what had already happened. You can say things were falling apart, but you knew what this would do to me, and you did it anyway. I won't let you shatter me again. "I'm sorry," she said, barely audible. "Please." She reached out, but Hollis blocked her path before she could get close. I didn't look at her. My attention turned to Bastian. "If you ever touch Giselle again, we're going to have a real problem." I was still on fire inside, still wrestling with the need to do something. But I held the line. "I'm not going to hurt you, because I know it's wrong. But if you ever cross that line again, and I see it, I won't hold back. You get that?" He nodded, visibly shaken. I gave him a shove on the shoulder. "Say it. Out loud." He looked away, voice shaking. "Yeah, Dorian, I get it." "Good." Then I faced Marcella again. "Hollis, Giselle, can you help her get dressed? She's not really presentable right now, and I've got a feeling we're about to have company." When I got back to the dock, I saw Leela pacing back and forth with her phone, speaking quickly. I couldn't make out what she was saying until I stepped closer. "Please, hurry. Someone's been hurt. She spotted me and cut herself off. "Did you bring it?" "No," I said. "I'm just here with my friend. He's got a signal gun. Should we—" "Okay. All right. Let's get this done." She gave me a resolute nod. I lifted the flare gun and fired it into the night. The red blaze arced overhead, painting everything below in a bloody glow. "Did you see that?" Yes, I saw it. Thank you, thank you." Leela ended the call, visibly shaking with relief. "Did they say what caused it?" I asked. She nodded rapidly, her face lit with joy. "False alarm," she said breathlessly. "The sheriff told me the alert system was either hacked or glitched out. They're still not sure it's completely fixed." "But he got the word directly from the top," she added. "And the light? Some guy panicked and slammed into a power pole after seeing the alert. Knocked out electricity across the whole valley. The sheriff's been going door to door, telling folks it's safe now." Her voice broke as the weight lifted. "Oh, God." Relief surged through me like a tide, washing away the fear that had gripped me all night. "We're okay," I murmured. "We're really okay." Leela flung her arms around me, her lips crashing into mine. I kissed her back, holding tight as she wrapped herself around me. All the fear, adrenaline, and raw gratitude, it all burst into fire between us. We were alive, and in that instant, we let ourselves feel it. We clung to each other, trying to make love while still dressed and still standing, when a voice, sharp and cold, sliced through the air. "What the actual hell?" We froze. Down the dock, standing among a group of shocked faces, some friends, some not, was my wife. Marcella's expression was a storm of rage and heartbreak, as if she couldn't decide whether to scream or crumble. Leela slowly unwrapped herself from me and took a few steps toward Marcella, remorse etched into her features. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "I'm sorry, Marcella. I didn't mean for it to end up like this. But while you were busy chasing Giselle and trying to seduce her boyfriend, I told Dorian I was done with Ophelia. He was there for me, as a friend." She lifted her chin. "He respected his vows. You didn't. While you were off with that slimeball I used to trust, Dorian risked his life for that same guy's girlfriend. And me? I found something better. I found someone who didn't judge, who hurt like I did." Her voice grew sharper, louder. "We threw our rings into the lake, our way of letting go. That moment mattered. We cried, we held each other. And then, well, Dorian isn't just some guy." She gave a raw, humorless laugh. "He's the guy, strong, loyal, kind, everything your smooth-talking rebound will never be." Marcella opened her mouth to respond, but Leela cut her off before a word escaped. "When I felt Dorian hold me, I just knew. I wanted him. Didn't matter that I'm gay. In that moment, I wanted him more than I've ever wanted anything. And he was beyond incredible." She turned to flash me a sly smile and a wink, then looked back at Marcella. "Truth is, I never knew what I was missing. Your husband, ex-husband, he delivered." "What?" Marcella's voice cracked in disbelief. "You can't be serious." Leela let the silence hang for a beat before breaking into a sharp laugh. "Why? Because I'm gay, I can't want him? Grow up?" Then her face hardened. "I've never liked women, not really. But I also never had the guts to speak up when you stole my date or stepped all over me. I stayed quiet back then." She moved closer. "But I'm not that girl anymore. I know who I am now. I know what I want. And I'm not letting you ruin that. And stay away from him." Silence swallowed the dock. No one spoke. I'd never heard Leela speak with such conviction, like she'd burned the last bridge and didn't care what stood behind it. Marcella seemed to fold under the weight of it all, and I saw something clearly for the first time. A line had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. No amount of apologizing could erase this. I had moved forward, with someone Marcella never believed would want me. Marcella crumpled, falling to her knees and weeping in full view of everyone. For a second, a flicker of feeling stirred in me, but it wasn't love, just sadness, just pity. Whatever love we had was long buried, forgotten even by her. Leela returned to me, the fire in her eyes replaced by quiet uncertainty. That's when I understood. Bravery doesn't come before fear, it comes after. She had been brave, for both of us. She stopped in front of me, searched my face, and sighed. "Did I go too far?" I chuckled. "You were terrifying." Then, without thinking, I muttered, "I feel weird." She laughed, stepped in, and kissed me again. We stood there, letting the moment linger like the first breath after drowning. Eventually, the police and medics showed up. We gave our statements. Tobias survived, but I'd busted his jaw out of place. He cursed me from the stretcher as they wheeled him off. While Leela spoke with the officers, Giselle quietly pulled me aside. "I really needed to thank you again," she whispered. "And I'm sorry too. I truly thought being with just you, maybe you and Marcella, would be enough for me. But if I'm honest with myself, I think a part of me always sensed the truth underneath it all. Still, I just nodded along, pretending to understand. You were holding on to hope for someone who clearly meant a lot to you, and how could I fault you for that? Especially when it was them who hadn't been truthful. As I said earlier, when I asked you to stop, you did. You didn't go back to them after that. And if you need to hear it plain and clear, I forgive you. I don't blame you for the way everything fell apart. And as for you thanking me, don't be ridiculous. Who wouldn't step up in that kind of moment?" She hesitated briefly, her face shadowed by something hard to name. "You'd be surprised," she replied. But then her smile returned. "But you did. I'm not saying you were some fairy tale hero riding in to save the day, but I was already falling for you. And now? Well, Damn. She shot a glance toward Leela, who was deep in conversation with a nearby officer. Looks like someone's spoken for, she said. Yeah, I replied. It's starting to look that way. Do you always fall that fast? She asked with a half smile. Yeah, I do. Shame, she said. She got a good one. I smiled back. Feels more like I'm the one who lucked out. Giselle offered a smile that carried a hint of sadness. See? That right there. She's lucky. Then she added, but if things ever change and you find yourself in LA, give me a call. I'll make sure it's a hell of a time. She kissed my cheek, light and quick, and tossed a flirty, later hero, over her shoulder before heading off. Just then, Leela came up behind me. Hey, I said. She was just saying thanks for earlier. Leela let out a quiet laugh and wiped Giselle's lipstick from my cheek with her thumb. Yeah, I figured. Did she pin a medal on you too? Basically, I said. But I told her I'm taken. Her grin stretched wide. You're damn right you are. But of course, it wasn't quite that easy. We both wanted to give this thing between us a real shot, but reality was throwing obstacles our way. On the drive to the airport the next morning, we agreed to take it slow. We'd grown close in the middle of a storm, and neither of us had really processed what we'd just survived. Even with a long-standing friendship as our foundation, we had to be sure our feelings weren't just the fallout of the chaos. Once we returned to our separate homes, we spent countless late nights on the phone, diving into the kind of deep conversations that couples usually save for much later. And yeah, we threw in plenty of playful, flirty texts too. But first, we both had to tie up loose ends from our past. Leela's separation turned out to be surprisingly clean. All of Ophelia's dramatics, her impassioned speeches, they ended up meaning nothing. The day Leela got back, the divorce papers were already waiting for her. Turns out Ophelia had been unfaithful too. She was already living with someone else. She left behind a pile of their stuff, a generous sum of money, and a signed set of documents. For all the dread Leela had felt, we ended up laughing at how simple it had all been. My situation? A whole different beast. Once everything surfaced, Marcella came to my new place, making one last emotional plea to fix things. She cried, swore she'd change, laid out every ounce of remorse she could muster. But I stayed firm. I told her plainly, we were finished. That didn't stop her. For the next 2 weeks, she tried everything, looping in my parents, her parents, old friends from Dallas, even dragging her sister into it. Most people stayed out of it, but a few reached out to convince me. They said she was devastated, that she couldn't imagine life without me. They brought up the nearly decade-long history we shared, all the memories. But none of it made a difference. She kept pressing until I finally said it outright. Nothing you say or do will change this. I don't love you anymore. And every time you try, I resent you more. If you ever truly cared about me, let me go. Her face crumpled. She looked down, then met my eyes again, tears shining. I need you to know. I never thought of you as my second choice. But you didn't choose me that night, I said. She shook her head slowly. It wasn't like that, she whispered. She tried to justify it, but stopped when she saw the look on my face. Without another word, she pulled out a pen and the divorce paperwork from her bag. I hate the pain I caused. I'll always regret that, but I'll never regret loving you. She couldn't finish the thought, couldn't bring herself to say what we both knew, that I had moved on. Instead, she signed the papers and handed them over. Goodbye, Dorian. You'll always mean something to me. A month later, she was living in LA with Bastian. Then came the third and final hurdle for Leela and me, a complication of a different sort. Our divorces wrapped up quickly. With no disputes and everything agreed on, it only took a few court dates. While waiting for the final decree, we threw our wedding bands into a lake, something small but symbolic. Still, we were living in different cities, and that created a physical distance between us. Not a deal breaker, but something we couldn't ignore. My job was remote, so relocating to DC was on the table. Leela, on the other hand, was eyeing grad school, maybe something big, so a move might have been in her future too. We hadn't had the big, "what's next" conversation yet, but we both felt it coming. We went back and forth about who should visit first. Eventually, we let fate decide. A coin toss did the trick. I came out on top. I chose Washington, D.C. as my destination for one simple reason. I'd never set foot there before. That was the whole point. But not long before my trip, something unexpected happened. Leela went completely silent for a few days. I tried to stay calm. After all, she lived in D.C., and work could easily be eating up all her time. Her messages still came through, but they felt cold and clipped, nothing like her usual self. By the 5th day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting, like she was slowly pulling away. Maybe she was working up the courage to end things gently. I had meant what I said that night by the lake, that I wanted to stay in her life no matter what. But she hadn't been the same since that terrifying experience. Even so, I couldn't bring myself to believe she'd simply vanish on me. That evening, I was reaching for my phone to call her when I heard a knock at the door. Assuming it was the delivery I was expecting, I walked over without much thought. But instead of my dinner, I found Leela standing there. She was bundled up in a coat far too heavy for the mild Dallas winter, her expression etched with worry. "Hi," she said softly, attempting a smile that didn't quite land. "Surprise, it's me." I stepped forward to hug her, but she barely responded, so I pulled back. "Is everything all right? You look off." She gave a vague shrug. "It's nothing major. I needed to talk to you. In person." "I should have called first," she added quickly, eyes darting away. "Is it okay if I come in?" I stepped aside, doing my best to mask the unease building in my chest. "Of course. Come on." "Did you bring anything with you?" I asked as she walked in. "It's in the car," she replied. "We can get it later." I nodded, though her tone only deepened my sense of dread. "You're kind of freaking me out, you know that?" I sat down and gestured for her to join me, but she remained standing, slowly pacing in that oversized coat. "I had a whole speech planned, but now it's a mess," she said, inhaling shakily before continuing. "First of all, I love you, not just platonically." "I mean real love," she said, voice thick, "the kind I felt back at the dock that night, even if I couldn't admit it. I told you I didn't have any lingering feelings, but that wasn't totally true. I thought I'd moved on. Clearly I haven't. That night brought everything rushing back." I opened my mouth to respond, but she raised her hand. "Let me say it all, please." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm not trying to trap you or make you feel responsible. I'm telling you because it's honest. I hope you feel the same, but even if you don't..." She loosened the belt of her coat. Then, in one motion, she let it slip to the floor. That's when I saw it, the soft swell of her belly. I stared, speechless, first at her body, then into her eyes, shimmering with tears. "I wasn't on birth control," she said in a whisper. "I didn't think I needed to be, and this isn't about tying you down. My dad only stayed with my mom out of a sense of duty," she continued. "I'm not repeating that story. I'm going to have this baby, but I'm not asking you to stay unless you want to. I know you're a good person. I just needed to tell you the truth. So please, Leela, just stop," I said, gently. She went quiet as I reached out my hand. "Come here." Slowly, wiping her cheeks, she walked over and stood in front of me. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to just drop this all on you." I leaned forward and pressed a kiss to her belly. Then, speaking softly to the life inside her, I said, "Your mom's being dramatic." Leela laughed, a little shakily. "Dorian, she thinks love, marriage, raising a child, she thinks it's just obligation, not joy." I kissed her stomach again, then stood and looked her in the eyes. She's wrong. I love her. I've loved her as my best friend for years, and now, it's more than that. She hesitated. But Dorian, we've never lived under the same roof. What if we clash? What if we drive each other insane? I kissed her again, softly, but with certainty. Sure, we haven't shared a space. So what? Our parents didn't start off that way either, and they made it work. So will we. And yeah, I'll probably get on your nerves sometimes, I said with a grin. But isn't that part of my charm? She laughed, leaning in for another kiss. Then I lifted her into my arms, cradling her like a bride, because that's exactly what she was about to become. I kissed her deeply, pouring in all the longing that had built up during our time apart. She broke away, breathless. I should probably grab my stuff from the car. Smiling, I carried her down the hallway. No rush. You won't be needing it just yet. Later, as we walked together across the damp shoreline, music drifted from the car's speakers. The sound of Malcolm's voice floated through the air, and Leela burst into laughter. It was one of our long-standing Labor Day traditions. I always took the wheel. She always handled the music. And without fail, she'd pick some song with themes of disaster, nuclear war, the end of the world, total heartbreak. 2 minutes to midnight, 99 Luftballons, I melt with you. This time it was Every Day is Like Sunday. Always something from the 80s, her way of winking at me through the speakers. When the last note faded, she was grinning from ear to ear. I sighed, part of our usual ritual. It was a running joke. I'd act mock annoyed, and she'd laugh even harder. Later, in bed, she'd find her own way to make it up to me. But if I ever got genuinely upset, she'd stop, no questions asked. And when we needed closeness, all it ever took was a word. Since we both understood it was just playful banter, the whole thing had the feel of a game we were destined to win, especially once we got where we were going. She had this lovable, dorky vibe, slinging corny dad jokes that could easily go toe-to-toe with mine. Most trips, we either crashed at my parents' place or hopped on a plane to visit hers. Then came the 2-hour trek from the airport to her childhood home so Maddox could soak up some time with his grandparents. This time was different. We drove to my folks' house and left Maddox behind for a bit. Leela and I had carved out a few days for ourselves at a peaceful little inn, and maybe to try giving him a little brother or sister. It didn't take long before we were both belting out lyrics, me completely mangling the words while putting on a terrible Manchester accent. It made her laugh so hard she nearly cried. She reached over, combed her fingers through my hair, and told me she loved me, with a look that made me feel like I was everything she'd ever need. Life, in that moment, felt impossibly good. So far from the chaos it had once been, at least for us. Keaton and Hollis? Still going strong. They honestly seemed unshakable. We weren't as tight as we used to be, but we checked in now and then, mostly online, sometimes in person. They'd added another kid to the mix, a boy who was practically Keaton's mini-me, and were tossing around the idea of a third. They were still into the whole partner-swapping scene, though Leela and I had bowed out ages ago. They knew where we stood, and thankfully, everyone respected those boundaries now. Technically speaking, the last time I saw Giselle in the flesh was that night by the lake when the cops showed up. But that's not quite the whole story. That was just the final time we met face to face. Over time, I saw her rise. She showed up in fashion editorials, on glossy billboards, modeling everything from perfume to high-end clothing. One night, while Leela and I were curled up in bed, Giselle appeared in a lingerie ad on her tablet. Leela arched an eyebrow and quipped, "So that's what you walked away from?" She was teasing, of course. And I never let her doubt for a second that I hadn't lost anything worthwhile. Marcella and Bastian didn't make it. No one was particularly surprised. Rumor had it they lasted 9 months. Honestly, that was 6 more than I gave them credit for. The breakup was messy. Bastian had cheated. They stayed tied together, though, after Marcella got pregnant unexpectedly. She had a daughter and ended up raising her alone. Back in college, Marcella could turn heads, sure, but she was no Hollywood starlet. 15 years and a baby later, she blended into the background in a place like LA. That blowout at the lake house even made the local news. It got a brief mention in an article about cyber attacks from Eastern Europe and America's response. Still, punch her name into Google now and the search results aren't flattering. Being a single mom hasn't helped her odds. Tobias. He landed in prison, thankfully. The sentence was shorter than he deserved, but longer than I expected. He'd blown through his cash, some of it bastions, on parties and chaos. Eventually, he hired a lawyer who secured a plea deal. Got him 18 months, served 12 for good behavior. That so-called good behavior didn't last. When the prison called to say he was getting out, I stayed wary. I'd done some serious damage to him, broke his jaw, and that's not the kind of thing someone forgets. Bastian didn't seem to take the same precautions, or if he did, they didn't help. Tobias carried a grudge, first when Bastian kicked him out that night, then again when he let him take the fall on his own. Not long after Tobias was released, Bastian got ambushed behind one of his go-to clubs. Junkies found him beaten nearly beyond recognition. He needed multiple surgeries and came out a shell of the man he was. People who still talked to Marcella said it wrecked him, turned him paranoid, always glancing over his shoulder. His career tanked, and his charisma evaporated. His dad still gave him a job in the family business, but it was mostly for show. Marcella's old role went to a clean-cut cousin. Witnesses said Tobias had been spotted near the club that night. Crossing state lines broke his parole, and when the cops searched his car, they found plenty to work with. He'd served a year and a half before, but this time the stakes were higher. Parole violation, crossing state lines with intent to commit violence, attempted murder. He got 18 years. As for Leela and me, we were in the best place we'd ever been. Things had been rocky with her parents at the beginning. She'd already told them why she kept her real feelings hidden for so long. Even before that night, she showed up at my door. Her dad took a while to come around, but he got there eventually. And once her mom realized the lengths she'd gone to in order to avoid a life she didn't choose, her anger turned into understanding. Still, when we showed up 2 months later, me by her side, her belly showing, they weren't exactly thrilled. But we got through it. Becoming grandparents softened them more than anything else could. Besides, I wasn't some stranger. I was part of her story, and the engagement ring I gave her, big and impossible to ignore, told them I wasn't going anywhere. As Malcolm's "Every day is like Sunday" faded into silence, Leela gave me a look that shifted from sweet to sly. I didn't get it until Two Tribes started playing. "You've got to be kidding," I said. "Again?" She lost it, laughing so hard it made me groan and grin at the same time. When she finally caught her breath, she shot me a wicked little smile. "I owe you one for that," she said. I gave her thigh a playful squeeze. "And how exactly are you planning to pay that debt?" She raised an eyebrow. "You'll see. I didn't let you pack my bag for nothing. You did notice how light it was, right?" I almost fired back a cheeky response, but I held back. No need for words just then. I had a road to focus on. The engine rumbled beneath us. She was still giggling, and together we drove off, just the two of us, into whatever the future had waiting. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.